My fiancé humiliated me in front of his family. The laughter, the stares, the way his words sliced through me like a knife, I'll never forget it. He thought I would break. He thought I would stay silent, but what he didn't know was that I was already planning the moment I would destroy him. And when it came, he never saw it coming. Because the next morning, everything changed. When I first met Johnny, I thought I'd stumbled into a fairy tale. I was working a long shift at the coffee shop near campus, trying to balance rent, exams, and endless exhaustion. He walked in like he owned the place. Tall, charismatic, the kind of man who turned heads without even trying. I remember thinking, what would someone like him ever want with someone like me? He ordered a cappuccino, smiled, and asked my name. Not just my name for the cup, my real name. The way he looked at me, it felt like I mattered, like I wasn't just another face in a crowd of strangers. For a girl who had been invisible most of her life, that smile was enough to make me believe in magic. It wasn't long before he became my everything. Flowers after my shifts, surprise visits when I studied late, dinners I couldn't afford but he insisted on. He told me he admired my determination, my strength, the way I never gave up no matter how hard things got. I should have seen the cracks then. The way he winced at my thrift store clothes, though he never said anything outright. The way he laughed at my budget dinners, saying it was cute that I didn't know the difference between red and white wine. I told myself it didn't matter. That love was about compromise, that I could grow into his world. Months turned into a year, then 2. And before I knew it, I was standing on a beach, fireworks exploding above us as he knelt on one knee with a diamond ring so brilliant it nearly blinded me. He whispered, "Be mine forever." And like a fool, with tears streaming down my face, I said yes. That was the night my dream began, and also the night it started to crumble. Johnny's family was everything mine wasn't. Wealthy, influential, the kind of people whose names opened doors before they even stepped into a room. When I met his parents for the first time, I tried so hard to impress them. I wore the only designer dress I could find at a secondhand boutique, my hands shaking as I set down my fork at their immaculate dining table. His mother smiled, tight-lipped, as she asked where I went to school. Community college, I said proudly. I had worked day and night to make it possible. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. How quaint. His father cleared his throat. And your parents? I hesitated, my chest tightening. My father passed when I was young. My mother, she left. Silence. A flicker of disapproval. Then Johnny's voice breaking the tension. She's the strongest person I know. I thought that meant something. I thought love would be enough to bridge the gap between their polished world and my humble beginnings. But every visit after that carried new reminders. His sister casually mentioning her designer shoes while eyeing mine with pity. His brother joking about charity cases when I walked into the room. Johnny would squeeze my hand and whisper, "Ignore them." So I did. For him, because that's what love is, right? Compromise, patience, faith. Still, doubts whispered in the back of my mind. Late night phone calls he wouldn't explain. The way his eyes lingered on women at events, then brushed it off as my imagination. His constant need to control how I dressed, where we went, who I talked to. He cloaked it in charm, but I felt it, chains tightening around me one link at a time. I told myself I was overthinking, that every couple had flaws, that one day his family would accept me, that one day I would belong, but belonging was never part of their plan. The night of the family dinner changed everything. I remember walking into their mansion, my dress carefully ironed, my hair pinned back just right. I had practiced my smile in the mirror, promising myself, tonight they'll finally see me for who I am, not where I came from. The table stretched endlessly, covered in crystal glasses, silver cutlery, plates of food I couldn't even name. Johnny sat beside me, his hand warm on my knee. For a moment, I thought, maybe this is the start of something new, and then he opened his mouth. It started small. A joke about how I had never tried oysters until I met him. The table chuckled. My cheeks warmed. I forced a laugh, telling myself it wasn't so bad. But then he kept going. How I didn't know the difference between champagne and Prosecco. How I once called his Armani suit just a nice jacket. How he had to teach me the ways of their world. And then the words that shattered me. She's basically my little charity project, but hey, at least she looks pretty on my arm. The laughter was deafening. His mother covering her mouth in mock shock, his father shaking his head with amusement, his siblings giggling behind their wine glasses. I sat there, frozen. My hands trembled under the table. My chest burned with humiliation. I wanted to scream. I wanted to disappear. But I couldn't move, because the man I loved, the man I gave everything to, had turned me into a joke. When I finally excused myself to the bathroom, I caught my reflection in the mirror. Red cheeks, wet eyes, a broken smile. I gripped the sink, whispering, "Don't cry, not here, not in front of them." But deep down, I knew something had shifted. That night when we got home, I asked him why he said those things. Why he humiliated me in front of everyone. He laughed. "Relax," he said. "They were just jokes. You're too sensitive." Too sensitive, as if my pain was entertainment. As if my humiliation was nothing more than a dinner trick to win their approval. I turned away, choking on my anger, and then I heard it. His voice from the other room, low, smug, on the phone with a friend. "She'll never leave me," he said. "Where is she gonna go? She's lucky I even chose her." My heart stopped. Those words, they didn't just sting. They killed something inside me. All those moments I thought were love, all those promises, all those smiles, lies, every single one. I sat there in the dark, my fists clenched, my chest hollow, and for the first time, I saw him for what he really was. Not a savior, not a partner, not the man of my dreams, but a cage. And I was the bird who had let herself be trapped. I thought I would cry, but I didn't. I thought I would scream, but I didn't. I just sat there, silent, as something inside me hardened into steel, because in that moment I knew I wouldn't let him win. Not this time. Not ever again. And what I discovered next changed everything. That night after the dinner, I couldn't sleep. I lay in the dark, listening to Johnny breathe beside me, steady and careless, like the world hadn't just shifted beneath my feet. My mind replayed the laughter, the way his family looked at me like I was nothing. Every giggle, every smirk, every word he spoke at my expense dug deeper and deeper. But it wasn't just what he said. It was how easily he said it. How proud he looked when they laughed. The man who once told me I was the strongest person he'd ever met had just turned me into a punchline. I thought maybe, just maybe, when the morning came, he'd apologize. Tell me he went too far. Tell me he didn't mean it. Instead, when I asked him, his answer chilled me. "You need to toughen up," he said, pouring himself coffee like we were talking about the weather. "Toughen up?" I repeated, my voice shaking. He looked at me like I was a child throwing a tantrum. "They were teasing. That's how my family is. You should be flattered. They wouldn't bother if they didn't think you could handle it." My stomach dropped. "You humiliated me, Johnny," he smirked. "You're being dramatic. If you want to be part of this family, you need to learn to laugh at yourself." I stared at him, my mouth dry. For the first time, I wondered, was this his plan all along? To break me down so I'd never feel like I belonged? I didn't answer. I couldn't. The words clung to my throat like thorns, but the universe wasn't finished with me yet. That same afternoon, while folding laundry, I heard his phone buzz. Normally, I wouldn't look. I trusted him, or at least I used to, but something in me snapped. My hands moved before I could stop them. I picked up his phone. A message lit up the screen. "Last night was amazing. When can we do it again?" My blood ran cold. I opened the thread. Dozens of messages, pictures, late-night plans, pet names. The truth sprawled across the screen, mocking me. He wasn't just cruel. He was a liar, a cheater. My chest tightened so hard I thought I'd stop breathing. I wanted to throw the phone, smash it against the wall, scream until the neighbors came running. Instead, I sat there, frozen, reading every disgusting word. When Johnny came home later, I confronted him. My hands shook as I held out the phone. "Who is she?" I whispered. His reaction? A laugh, not guilt, not shame, just laughter. "Oh, come on," he said, rolling his eyes. "You really think I'm going to be with only one woman for the rest of my life?" My vision blurred. "You're engaged to me, Johnny." "Yeah." And he smirked. "That's status, that's commitment, but fun? Fun is different." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Fun? You're blowing this out of proportion," he said, plopping down on the couch like nothing happened. "Every guy I know does it. You should be grateful I picked you to put a ring on." Grateful. That word snapped something inside me. I stood there, trembling, my fists clenched so hard my nails dug into my palms. You don't love me, I whispered. He looked up at me, his eyes cold. Love? Love doesn't exist, sweetheart. It's all power. You'll understand one day. I thought my heart had broken at dinner, but this was annihilation. Still, it didn't stop there. The days that followed were worse. He paraded me around like a trophy, smiling at me in public, whispering cruel things in private. At dinners, he'd joke about my clothes, my education, my family. In front of friends, he called me his little charity project. Behind closed doors, he reminded me I had nothing without him. One night, when I begged him to stop embarrassing me, his face hardened. You need me, he said flatly. Don't forget that. I swallowed back tears. I don't need you. His lips curved into a cruel smile. Really? Without me? You're nothing. No one. Just a poor little girl with no family, no connections, no future. Every word felt like a hammer, beating me into the ground. But then came the moment that shattered the last of my illusions. We were at another family gathering. His sister, glass of champagne in hand, leaned close to him and whispered just loud enough for me to hear. So when are you dumping her? We all know this is temporary. Johnny chuckled. Soon enough. I just like watching her squirm. The room laughed, all of them, as if I were entertainment, as if my pain was their evening's amusement. I couldn't breathe. My hands went numb. I excused myself, slipping outside into the cold night air. Tears streamed down my face as I gasped for breath. How did I get here? How did I let this man strip me of my dignity, my strength, my worth? I thought about my father, about his voice telling me, never let anyone treat you like you're less. And I realized I had betrayed myself by staying. But still, I stayed silent. I wasn't ready yet. The next betrayal was financial. I found out Johnny had been using my name, my credit, to secure loans he didn't want on his record. My stomach twisted as I stared at the paperwork. He had signed me into debt without my knowledge. When I confronted him, my voice shaking, he just shrugged. It's just business, he said. Relax. You'll benefit from it too once we're married. My head spun. You forged my signature. It's called being resourceful, he said. You should be thanking me. Thanking him for stealing from me, for chaining me tighter. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my heart racing, my chest heavy with fury. Every betrayal stacked higher and higher, like bricks of a wall closing in around me. Humiliation, lies, infidelity, financial traps, his smirk, his arrogance, his unshakable belief that I would never leave. And the worst part? He was right. For the moment. Because I had nowhere to go, no family to run to, few friends left after years of isolating myself for him. He had stripped me bare until the only thing I had left was him. And that's exactly how he wanted it. But Johnny underestimated me. He thought humiliation would break me. He thought betrayal would trap me. But instead, it woke something I didn't even know was inside me. Because the truth was, I wasn't nothing. And I wasn't going to let him destroy me. Not anymore. What he didn't know was that every cruel word, every smug smile, every betrayal was only fueling me, feeding the fire. And when that fire finally burned through the fear, through the shame, through the heartbreak, I knew exactly what I had to do. Because if Johnny thought he could shatter me without consequences, he was about to learn the kind of woman I truly was, and he would regret every single word. I wish I could tell you I left him right then, that I threw the ring back in his smug face and walked out the door. But the truth? I didn't. I was trapped. Or at least, I believed I was. Days blurred into nights. Nights blurred into endless arguments, endless humiliations. Johnny paraded me like a prize when it suited him and discarded me like trash when it didn't. I felt hollow, a shell. The breaking point came one night after another party. His family had been their usual selves, condescending smiles, cruel whispers. Johnny had been worse, whispering in my ear at the dinner table, "Careful how you eat, darling. You don't want them to see your poor girl manners." By the time we got home, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I asked him why. Why he kept hurting me. Why he needed to tear me down constantly. He laughed. That laugh. The one that made me feel small, invisible, disposable. Because it's fun, he said. Because you'll never leave. And maybe he was right. That night, I collapsed onto the bathroom floor after he went to bed, the cold tiles against my skin, the silence pressing against my ears. For the first time, I wondered if this was it. If this was my life now, a life of humiliation, betrayal, and pain. I wept, quiet, broken sobs that shook my whole body. I thought of my father, his voice, his hands rough from work but always gentle when he held mine. "Promise me," he used to say, "you'll never let anyone dim your light." And here I was. Dimmed, extinguished. I closed my eyes, whispering to the empty room, "I can't do this anymore." And that's when I noticed it. His briefcase, carelessly left open by the sink. Normally, I wouldn't have dared, but something inside me stirred, maybe desperation, maybe fate. My hand moved without thinking. I pulled it closer. Inside were papers, contracts, bank statements, a folder thick with documents, and then I saw it. My name, page after page, debt in my name, loans I never signed, property deeds he had tied me into without consent. My hand shook as I flipped through them. He hadn't just betrayed me emotionally, he had entangled me in his mess. And then, the final page. Emails, printouts, messages that weren't just about infidelity, they were about fraud. Numbers that didn't add up, deals he was hiding from his own family. My breath caught, my heart raced. For the first time, I realized I had something. Evidence. It felt like the universe had handed me a weapon, but even then, I wasn't ready to fight. Not yet. The next morning, I tried something different. I smiled, I cooked breakfast, I kissed his cheek as if nothing had changed. His eyes narrowed, suspicious, but then he smirked. "That's better," he said. "You're learning." No, Johnny, I wasn't learning. I was preparing. Still, the weight of loneliness crushed me. I needed someone, anyone, to remind me I wasn't crazy, that I wasn't weak. That's when I reached out to Emma. Emma had been my best friend in college. We hadn't spoken in over a year. Johnny didn't like her, said she was jealous and a bad influence. Slowly, I had let the distance grow, but that night, with trembling fingers, I sent her a message. "Can we talk?" She called immediately. The moment I heard her voice, the dam inside me broke. I told her everything, every humiliation, every betrayal, every cruel word. I expected judgment. I expected disappointment. Instead, she said, "You don't sound weak. You sound like someone who's finally ready." Her words lit something inside me, a spark, small but alive. We met in secret, coffee shops, quiet parks. I showed her the documents. Her eyes widened. "Do you realize what you have here?" she whispered. "This isn't just betrayal. This is evidence. He could lose everything." Her words echoed in my mind long after I went home. Lose everything. For weeks, I played my part. The perfect fiancé, smiling at dinners, laughing at jokes, wearing the clothes he picked, saying the words he wanted. He thought he had me wrapped around his finger, but inside, I was awake. Every cruel remark, every smug smirk, every whispered insult only fed the fire in me. I kept the papers hidden. I copied files from his laptop when he left it unlocked. I saved voicemails of his affairs, messages where he mocked me to his friends. The more I gathered, the stronger I felt, the weaker his grip became. And then, one night, lying beside him as he snored, I whispered to myself, "It's time." Because I had spent too long at rock bottom. I had cried enough tears. I had swallowed enough humiliation. Now I had what I needed, the proof, the plan, the strength, and if Johnny thought I would stay silent, he was about to learn just how wrong he was. I don't think there's a single moment when revenge begins. It isn't a switch you flip. It's more like a storm, brewing silently, gathering strength until one day it unleashes everything it has. For me, it started small, subtle. Johnny had no idea I was building a case against him. Every time he sneered at me, I smiled. Every time he called me pathetic, I bit my tongue. And while he slept, I worked, gathering, organizing, connecting the dots. But revenge isn't just about the evidence. It's about timing. And I knew exactly when to strike. Our engagement party. It was his idea, of course. A grand event at his parents' estate. White tents, chandeliers, champagne fountains. 100 people gathered to celebrate us. The perfect couple. Or so they thought. "Make sure you don't embarrass me," he hissed that morning, adjusting his cufflinks. I smiled sweetly. "Of course, darling." What he didn't know was that I had prepared a little surprise. The evening unfolded like a dream, at least for him. Guests poured in, laughing, congratulating, toasting to our future. Johnny basked in the attention, his arm draped over me like a trophy. I played my role well, smiling, nodding, letting him believe the show was his. But behind the scenes, Emma was already at work. She had the USB drive, the one with the files I'd copied, emails, contracts, proof of his fraudulent deals. She slipped it into the laptop connected to the projector. I waited. My heart pounding, palms sweaty, every second stretching longer than the last. And then came the moment. Johnny tapped his glass. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said with that arrogant grin, "thank you all for coming to celebrate the woman I've chosen to spend my life with. Though between us, I think she's the lucky one." Laughter rippled through the crowd. My cheeks burned. He always had to have the last word, the last jab. He raised his glass. "To my bride-to-be. May she always remember where she came from and who lifted her up." That was it. The trigger. The lights dimmed. The projector flickered to life. At first, just family photos. Johnny as a child, Johnny graduating, Johnny's vacations. He beamed proudly, not realizing what was coming next. Then the emails. At first, a few words projected 10 feet tall for everyone to see. Client overcharged. Falsify invoice. Keep this between us. The room went quiet. Johnny froze. More slides, bank transfers, property deeds, his name tied to every shady deal. Whispers rippled through the crowd. His father's face turned pale. His mother's hand clutching her pearls. And then the final blow. Messages between him and another woman. Explicit. Cruel. Him mocking me, calling me a convenient accessory. Saying, "She'll never leave. She has nowhere else to go." Gas echoed through the tent. I could feel every eye on me, but for the first time, I didn't feel shame. I felt power. Johnny lunged for the laptop, shouting, "Turn it off. This isn't real. She's lying." But it was too late. The damage was done. His father stood, his voice like thunder. "Is this true, Johnny?" Johnny stammered, sweated, denied, but the evidence was irrefutable. And I simply stood there, calm, silent, watching as the empire he had built on lies crumbled in front of everyone who once admired him. The fallout was immediate. The guests dispersed in shocked whispers. His business partners pulled him aside, demanding explanations. His parents turned their backs. Johnny grabbed my arm as the tent emptied, his face twisted in rage. "You'll regret this," he spat. I looked him dead in the eye and whispered, "No, Johnny, you will." I pulled free and walked out into the night, my heart racing with exhilaration. But revenge doesn't end in one night. In the days that followed, the consequences unraveled like thread from a sweater. Word spread quickly. His shady dealings, his infidelity, his cruelty. His company launched an internal investigation. Clients pulled contracts. I heard from Emma that his parents cut him off financially. The family name, the thing he'd always flaunted like a weapon, no longer wanted him attached to it. And me? I was free. He tried, of course. He called, texted, begged, threatened. "We can fix this," he said one day. "No one has to know it was you." But the world already knew. And I didn't care about fixing anything. I cared about healing myself. 1 week later, I met Emma for coffee. We sat outside, the sun warm on our faces, the smell of fresh pastries in the air. "You did it," she said, raising her cup. "No," I corrected softly. "We did it." We clinked our mugs together, and for the first time in a long time, I felt light, whole, alive. But just as I let myself exhale, just as I started to believe the worst was over, I got a message from someone I didn't expect, someone who claimed they knew something even darker about Johnny. And what I discovered next changed everything. They say time heals, but I don't think it's time that heals you. It's choice. The choice to stop looking backward, to stop replaying the moment you were humiliated, betrayed, discarded, and to finally choose yourself. In the weeks after the engagement party, I made that choice every single day. At first, it was hard. The gossip was everywhere, on social media, in whispers at the cafe, and the pitying glances from neighbors. Everyone knew what happened. And while Johnny's reputation sank, mine surprisingly rose. People reached out, some who had been silent when he belittled me in public, some who had rolled their eyes when I tried to speak up. They apologized. They said they admired me now for my strength, for my courage, for not staying silent. But what mattered most wasn't what others thought. It was how I began to see myself. I remember waking up one morning, sunlight streaming across my bed. The sheets were mine now, fresh, crisp, no trace of him. I made coffee, sat by the window, and opened my journal. Instead of writing about him, I wrote about me, what I wanted, what I dreamed of. For the first time in years, my future wasn't tied to someone else's name or approval. I enrolled in classes again, something I'd given up when Johnny told me school was a waste of time. I started painting too, the way I had in college, the canvases filled with color, emotion, life, pieces of me I thought I'd lost. Emma remained by my side through it all. Some nights we stayed up laughing about the chaos we'd survived. Other nights she simply listened when I cried about wasted years. She reminded me that healing isn't linear, that even when you've broken free, the scars can still ache. But every day I grew stronger. And Johnny? I'd like to say I never thought about him again. But that would be a lie. I heard things, little fragments of his downfall. The investigation into his company uncovered more than anyone expected. Lawsuits, debt, his family name dragged through headlines. The last I heard, he was living in a small apartment downtown, jobless, friendless, drinking too much. He tried to call me once more, just once. His voice on the voicemail was hoarse, desperate. I lost everything, please. I just need someone to believe in me again. I deleted it without replying, because the truth was, I had already believed in him once. I gave him my love, my loyalty, my future, and he destroyed it all. There are no second chances for men like Johnny. One evening, months later, I stood in front of a mirror, zipping up a dress for a gala. Not his gala, not his world, mine. I'd been invited by a women's foundation after sharing my story anonymously online. They wanted me to speak about resilience, about finding strength after betrayal. I stared at my reflection for a long time, not because I doubted myself, but because for the first time, I actually recognized the woman looking back at me. She wasn't the broken girl who once begged for scraps of affection. She wasn't the silent fiancé who endured cruel jokes for the sake of keeping the peace. She was free. Standing at the podium that night, I told a room full of strangers the words I had once been too afraid to say. No one has the right to define your worth. No partner, no family, no name. You define yourself. The applause filled the hall, but what filled me was something quieter, something steadier, a peace I had never known. I still remember the last time I saw Johnny in person. It was months after everything. I was walking through the park on a crisp autumn morning, scarf wrapped around my neck, coffee in hand, and there he was, sitting on a bench, unshaven, staring at the ground. For a moment, our eyes met. His widened, as if he'd seen a ghost. He opened his mouth, maybe to apologize, maybe to beg. I'll never know, because I simply smiled politely, nodded once, and kept walking. That was the moment I knew I was free. Looking back now, I realized something important. Revenge wasn't about destroying him. It was about reclaiming myself. It was about showing the world and me that I was never the weak, pathetic woman he tried to convince me I was. And maybe that's why, in the end, it hurt him more than any scandal or lawsuit, because I didn't just leave him. I thrived without him. Sometimes my phone rings and it's his mother, or my own parents, who once doubted me, who once believed his lies over my truth. They want to reconnect, to smooth things over, but I don't answer. I don't need validation anymore, because I already know who I am. And as for Johnny, well, that was the day he realized he'd lost everything.